Now, I know that in some parts of the world, the words Muslim and music are not often linked together in the public mind, but they should be. The cultural heritage of Islam has long embraced musical language as an elemental expression of human spirituality. Listening to music, practicing music, sharing music, performing music have long been an intimate part of life for Muslim communities across the world, as has been the chanting of devotional and historical or epic texts. I learned at a young age how my own ancestors, the Fatimids, cultivated music in the city of Cairo 1,000 years ago. And I also learned about how the Iberian region, where we are now meeting, the territory known as Al-Andalus, produced new forms of music and poetry in the late medieval period. It was here, in Al-Andalus, that Muslims, Jews, Christians created together an exemplary culture of tolerance, fostering musical creativity that even included new types of musical instruments and pioneering approaches to music education. I also remember a visit I made to Tajikistan in 1995, during which I was deeply impressed by the richness of musical life among those whom I had visited. I began to think even more about the ways in which music can bring a strong cultural anchor, deepening a sense of community, identity, and heritage, while simultaneously reaching out in powerful ways to people of different backgrounds.
Yali Madad, Salam Alaikum, Bienvenue, welcome to another Friday Night Reflections. A chance for our Jamaat to come together, discuss interesting topics, while our kids somehow manage to listen, group chat their friends, and scroll their TikTok feeds all at the same time. A special hello as well to our multi-faith family members. I'm Zulekha Nathoo. I've been a journalist for almost 20 years now, and this is my first time hosting this program. So thank you to Farah, Omar, Zain, and all my media friends in Canada for being unavailable. And thank you at home for dressing up in your finest sweatpants and inviting me into your living rooms. I'm coming to you not live at all, but very nicely edited and packaged from Atlanta, Georgia, where there's been one or two news events here over the last few months. I don't know, you might have heard about them. Tonight's musical theme is the perfect match for me because I have spent several years as an arts and entertainment reporter. I've covered the Grammy Awards, the Oscars, and interviewed some of the biggest names in Hollywood, so you might know my work from CBC News in Los Angeles and Toronto, and most recently with the BBC. But make no mistake, I am originally from Calgary. The 403 is the place to be. I still consider Canada home. But no matter where we live, one thing that unites us all is music. I mean, think about it. Have you ever met anyone that's been like, music, not into it? That would be weird. Because music has the power to break down barriers, carry social and political messages, and bring communities together. And that's why the arts are so vital to our mental health, our well-being, and our very survival. Our opening segment was from the Aga Khan Music Awards in Lisbon, Portugal, so we hope that you enjoyed that. We have a fantastic show for you tonight, including a conversation with someone who's right in the middle of that musical action, the director of the Aga Khan Music Programme. We'll also talk to some talented Canadian artists and get insight into the process of making music. So let's get things started with Council for Canada President Ameerally Kassim-Lakha in his final installment of From the Heart.
My dear brothers and sisters, Yali Madad. Tonight is the last discussion in our series, From the Heart, where each week we discuss one character trait crucial to success in today's world. Today we will discuss the importance of resilience. Resilience is the capacity to adapt and endure in the face of adversity. It is the recognition that through life, each one of us will meet unforeseen obstacles. We will face declines in our businesses, issues in our relationships, and setbacks in our health. These are facets of life we cannot escape. Our task, therefore, is to meet them head-on with intelligence and courage, with the mindset that setbacks are not forces conspiring against us, but are catalysts for growth, meaning, and fulfillment. When we accept this, we can face challenges more positively, develop coping mechanisms, and maintain balance. Let me highlight 3 approaches we can take to build resilience: optimism, mindfulness, and faith. Let me start with optimism. Optimism is a lens through which we can view the events of our life, of having hope and confidence in the present and future. Churchill famously said, "A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." Optimism is not about wishful thinking or ignoring the existence of adversity. It is about actively searching for the silver lining within it, seeing the glass half full. Research shows that optimists feel healthier, have stronger relationships, and rise faster in the workplace. When we are positive, people are drawn to us because we represent a source of comfort and hope for the future. The pandemic may appear to be a setback for many individuals, causing disruption in personal and professional lives. Some individuals take the setback personally, but optimists see great opportunity to pivot and spring forward. They will look to mentors for support and use their networks to actively explore new horizons. The institutions have dedicated significant time and resources to support the Jamaat through forward-looking initiatives such as the Future of Work and fast-track mentorship, and we encourage the Jamaat to leverage these wherever possible. Irrespective of how many months will remain in the pandemic, to be optimistic is to find ways to make the most of the period we are in and focus on the strong future ahead. The second tool of resilience is mindfulness. As humans, we experience setbacks in physical and emotional ways. We become stressed and let our minds wander to unproductive places. To be mindful is to recognize that we can't change the setbacks that occur in life, but we can choose how we process and respond to such events. When we are mindful, we are present, we are in the moment, we are intensely aware of what we are feeling in any given moment so we can control how we internalize the event we are experiencing. People who view setbacks as an indication of personal failure allow it to pervade all aspects of their lives. However, those who are mindful recognize that setbacks arise from situations outside our control. They aren't personal, and so we don't let them define our health, our relationships, and the narrative of our lives. Finally, perhaps the most powerful tool to develop resilience is faith. Faith puts our problems into context. It reminds us that we are in this world for a broader purpose that is beyond the day-to-day ups and downs of life that we experience. Maulana Sultan Muhammad Shah had said, "Failure should be forgotten and new efforts made. Despondency is a sin and hope a necessary part of faith, both for material wealth and above all, for spiritual enlightenment. Our faith teaches us to view life in a hopeful way, to remember that Allah protects, cares, and loves us beyond what we can imagine, to call on Him in difficulty and submit to His will. These are expressions of faith that pull us through difficulty and bring us closer to enlightenment. My dear brothers and sisters, developing resilience takes time. It is something that may come easier to the older members of our Jamaat because they have a longer perspective on life and have experienced its ups and downs. Resilience doesn't always come naturally to our children experiencing setbacks for the first time. Let us help them understand the importance of qualities of self-awareness, self-control, and being calm under stress. Let us strengthen their resilience through goal setting, embracing change, and activating positive emotions. Above all, remind them that in times of difficulty, it is important to stay connected with sources of support, be helpful to others, and cultivate an attitude of survivorship. Before I conclude, there is one other matter. The Future of Work team is piloting a Salesforce training module for the Jamaat. Salesforce is a cloud-based software providing customer relationship management service, marketing automation, and analytics. After completing the training, participants will be employable as Salesforce administrators, a role that is currently in high demand. This pilot is the first in a series of certification programs we endeavor to bring to the Jamaat and will be implemented with partners who are seeking to hire. No prior IT training is required. The Future of Work team is also hiring coaches and staff navigators. Please refer to our Future of Work website for regular updates. Thank you and Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you, President Saib, for sharing those thoughts with us. Tonight, we are privileged to have the director of the Aga Khan Music Programme join us, Fairouz Nishanova. Fairouz is a cultural development specialist with a lifelong love of the performing arts, dance, and music. I consider myself a global citizen for the number of places I've lived, but she is the real deal. Listen to this. She was born in Sri Lanka to Uzbek parents. She grew up in Amman, Jordan, was educated at Moscow State University, and then went on to the London School of Economics. She served as the director of the Aga Khan Music Programme at the Geneva-based Aga Khan Trust for Culture since 2005. On that note, we want to show you a quick video about the Aga Khan Music Programme before we get into our conversation with Fairouz.
If you want to go north, go south. And that more or less describes the circuitous path that has now led finally to the implementation of the Music Awards. It was back in 2001 that my brother launched in Central Asia the Aga Khan Music Initiative, as it was then called, with the aim of helping to preserve and revitalize traditional folk, classical and devotional music in the region.
The Aga Khan Music Initiative has been a pioneer in the emerging field of cultural development. It was given a mission to help revitalize musical traditions that had been in many ways devastated by the experience of the Soviet Union.
So we went and dealt with what was needed the most, and that was the revival of traditional and time-honored method of music education, the master apprentice or the Ustad Shagird. And then, because we live in the 21st century, we had to not only revive it, but also make it relevant to the kids, the students of today. It's a 3 or 4 day event that offers a panoramic view of the artistic excellence throughout the world of the Great East. And I'm so happy that through the vision of His Highness and Prince Amin, it was the city of Lisbon that was chosen to celebrate the first awards. Because historically it made perfect sense. It's literally at the crossroads of the great Western and Eastern civilization.
Fairouz, thank you so much for joining us today. So let's get right into it. First of all, what makes the Aga Khan Music Programme particularly important now and in these times?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It really is a pleasure and an honor. And I think as a disclaimer, I need to say that my work is not work. It's pure passion and dedication. So I would celebrate its importance on the daily basis and not necessarily at the time that is considered challenging for so many of us. And I think what really makes the importance and underlines the importance of the music program at this particular moment is that we begin to understand that the concept of music and art as pure entertainment is completely false. And especially for so many of us who come from the East, if we divide the world into West and East, then historically in the East, music is not something that was ever viewed as just only entertainment, something that you buy a ticket to go to and listen to for a period of time. On the contrary, it was and remains something that is an instrument for the history to be passed down from one generation to another. This is how the rituals, the norms of behavior are explained and taught. This is also how storytelling is celebrated, right? This is what separates us human beings from so many other forms of life. The music program, because it started so many years ago and because it started without a dictated kind of format, it was able and it was given the permission to evolve and to change with the needs of our main beneficiaries, with the needs of our audience, because it's something, it's a program that is so much alive and so much in touch with those who are its main consumers. It gives comfort, it gives education, it gives mentorship, it gives healing, and it answers very difficult questions, difficult to ask and sometimes even more difficult to answer. It answers those questions at the time when those answers are most needed.
You mentioned comfort and healing, and I'm wondering how you see music helping people right now cope with some really deep-seated emotions like anxiety and a little bit of sadness and loneliness. How do you think music can help people through those situations?
Very much so. I think I was always on some level aware of how powerful an instrument music is and music education is. But I think I really came face to face with it when back in 2012 and 2013, the music program, we were already quite established as music educators and mentors. But we were called upon by an extraordinary NGO called Action for Hope that delivers art in form of education and healing to displaced communities worldwide, but primarily in the Middle East. And what I saw face to face is that a child who went through a particularly difficult form or a repercussion from an armed conflict is usually unable to say what exactly happened to them. If you ask them to dance it or to draw it, to paint it, to sing it, to play it, even if they don't know how to play a musical instrument, somehow that difficult story comes out. And once it's out, it stops being a poison. It stops being something that controls the lives of a person. When the problem is not fully dealt with, it becomes something akin to a poison. And that to me was really seeing this extraordinary power of art and art education and music education when it's given in the right form, when it's given not as something that is imposed, not as something that is light entertainment, but when it's given as a tool for expression, a tool for self-expression. Its power is exceptional and extraordinary. And I'm so privileged to be able to continue making sure that this kind of toolkits are available to children and adults worldwide in all the countries in which AKDN works, but even beyond that through those extraordinary means of communications that all of us have become so familiar with in the last few months.
It seems like music can be such a source of comfort. So maybe walk us through what the music program is all about, especially for people who might not be familiar with it. What's your vision? How are you trying to carry out that vision?
We've only become known as Aga Khan Music Programme at the end of last year, at the end of, sort of in the middle towards the end of 2020. The music initiative, as it was then known, Aga Khan Music Initiative, was launched by His Highness the Aga Khan in 2000, in the year 2000. And what happened back in late 90s and early 2000 is that AKDN as a network made a commitment to the region of Central Asia. AKDN is really well known for its concept and its defense and its sort of daily incarnation of the integrated approach to development. That is to say that development is delivered to our country clients and country regions as an integrated model between economic, social, and cultural development. It is believed, His Highness believes, and all of us believe, that the development goals are best achieved when all of these components of development practices are seen as a joint undertaking, as a joint project. And that's when its benefits become more apparent and also much more long-lasting. So when we made, as a network, when we made the commitment to the region of Central Asia, and later, a couple of years later, Afghanistan, what happened is that the countries were just coming out from under the Soviet rule, from under decades of the Soviet rule. There were two generations that had very little connection to their own artistic roots, to their own musical and artistic expression of the land that their grandparents grew up with. And so when you don't have a foundation on which, an education, of course, is a foundation on which pretty much anything can be built. But when that is broken and when that is absent, that means that the next step, the creative step, becomes impossible. So when the music program, that's when the music program really was created. We had, on the one hand, a apparent breakdown in the music and arts education when it came to traditional music. And on the other hand, we had the commitment to the region that AKDN made. And then the cultural development wing could not immediately fulfill. So when the music program, at that point, Music Initiative, was created, it was really first and foremost arts and music education program. We had to go into the regions, we had to find the masters, traditional masters, who still had the ability to teach their knowledge and craft, those who were still willing to do so. So we had to find the masters, find those who still had ability, knowledge, and desire to share their craft and to pass it on to the next generation of both artists and audiences. We then had to give them the most basic financial and administrative needs to enable them to teach. We then had to ensure that this is the kind of art form that became recognized and respected again, not only in their home countries, but also abroad, which meant creation of the performance program on top of the education program. We then began producing this music, so we became a very unlikely kind of music producers and partners. And then a few years into this, realized that we could only preserve the tradition and help the tradition in a very limited way if we continuously wrapped it in this preservation blanket. But to really help it grow, it had to be developed, not only preserved. And that, of course, could not happen in a vacuum. So we had to then connect this newly created artistic communities that we were nurturing in Central Asia. We had to connect them with the arts communities and musicians and creators in the regions and countries that they always shared historic connections with. So we became the promoters of East-East fusion and East-East music creations, which is something that we continue to do today.
I find it fascinating that you know, you have people who have endured so much and have seen and witnessed so much conflict, and music is so central to their lives and their fulfillment that they are willing to do anything to make it happen in any form. And I want to bring that idea a little bit closer to home now, because what I find in a lot of our communities, especially in the West, is I hear and I see a lot of focus on especially families wanting to steer kids in very traditional careers or métiers, you know, doctors, lawyers, engineers, that kind of thing. And music is often a very kind of footnote in people's lives. And I'm curious if you can offer some advice. What should families do when they see that perhaps their child is gifted or has such a passion for music? How can we as a community support musicians to realize that potential?
Oh, that is a wonderful question, and I wish there was a single answer that could sort of put everything in its order. Look, music and musical arts are particular in a sense that any other profession you can pretty much learn. No matter how difficult it is to become a lawyer or a really good doctor, it's something that after years of learning and after years of practice could be coaxed into becoming your own. It could be coaxed into becoming a profession. That cannot be done in the creative sphere of music and musical arts unless there is a talent that needs to be shaped in the very beginning. So talent is something that is either given or not. It's also given to a very gifted surgeon or a physician. But musical talent, in my experience, is something that is very difficult to contain. And those who are lucky to be in a possession of that talent usually are almost unable to control that. It's something that has to be expressed. It's something that has to be learned. And we as community, as parents, the best that we can do is to give those who are so gifted the ability to learn the basic tools of that language that they already possess, but not necessarily know how to use. So as long as we give them an environment that is both nurturing and supportive in helping them understand what are the basic steps in learning the letters of this new language that they seem to speak, then the talent will speak for itself. And there's no need to limit our ability to learn to a single profession. There are wonderful politicians who remain extraordinary artists, and on the other, and vice versa, there are wonderful gifted artists who later become masters of another profession. I think as community we need to recognize the basic and most important role of the arts in any community.
It's so interesting because one of the beautiful things I think about AKDN that really separates it from other international development networks is that it has very long-term goals, right? And I'm just curious how in that kind of scenario, how do you measure success with a program like this? Because culture and arts is so subjective. And so when you feel like you have taken flight or artists that have worked with you are doing really well, how do you measure that? Is it, you know, they get a recording contract, they can make a career of what they're doing, they can collaborate with Beyonce and Jay-Z, or is it just that they're happy doing what they do and can maybe inspire people in the future? What is your measure these days and looking ahead of success for the program?
That's an extraordinary question. Well put. And they do collaborate. One of the winners of the Aga Khan Music Awards in 2019 dropped away from communication for a little bit, and I was wondering what was happening with her. And she explained to me that she was working on this collaboration, and she wasn't quite sure who the person was. And to cut the long story very short, she was featured on the lead single of Beyonce's latest album. So that. Probably for a Westerner, that is.
I just use Beyonce as an example. That is so cool.
That is quite a measure of success. But I'll tell you a story that happened to me back in 2008, I think, or 2009. We tried celebrating this new form of art that we were so happily cultivating and creating. We tried celebrating it through putting it on stages in the West, because, you know, it's ironic that the recognition abroad very often brings respect at home. So we tried celebrating it on Western stages, but the stages that were not known for presenting the kind of music, the kind of art that we were putting on those stages. So instead of going to the places that would readily welcome sort of not very known form of music, we wanted to put it on grandiose stages, such as Carnegie Hall, such as the English National Opera, such as Théâtre de l'Odéon in Paris. And once the invitation from Carnegie Hall came in, to me, as someone who grew up mostly in the West, that was a given, because the position and the reputation and the prestige of Carnegie Hall is not something that you ever question. You get the invitation, you go there. And I was surrounded by artists from 6 different countries, from the Silk Route region. And one of them, who was from Kyrgyzstan, and he was the most extraordinary epic storyteller, epic story narrator. He received the date and he nodded, and then he looked up at me and said, "I can't make it on that date." And we were about 9 months away from the event, and I was sort of astonished, and I asked him what was so important that he couldn't make it to the performance at Carnegie Hall. And he said, well, 3 villages down from mine, there is a storyteller competition, a manaschi competition. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my father have always competed in that village. It's once a year. So I have to be there. If I don't go this year, I will have broken the tradition that lasted through generations. I cannot be allowed to do that. I will not be respected and recognized. And how will I be able to teach after that? And it was such an education for me, because for him, something that happened miles away on the stage of Carnegie Hall was of no importance whatsoever. But the reputation he had in his community as not only carrier of the tradition, but also educator, was not something that he was willing to compromise. So I learned a lot in that instance.
I love that story, and how one thing that's important to one artist might not mean the same to another one. I'm curious, if we take a step back now and try to look at the bigger picture with political divisions, how can music help people to understand each other better?
Well, the extraordinary power of it is that it is unable to show the hidden faces, the faces of a community that are so often completely marred by conflict, by negative publicity. If you were ethnically an Easterner, then you'd be forgiven for thinking that East, global East, is something that is a continuous and permanent source of either conflict or disruption. And you'd be forgiven for no longer knowing that historically the global East served as a cradle of so many creations and so many discoveries, be it in art, be it in music, be it in poetry, be it in astronomy or medicine. And I think this is the kind of heritage that is not only to be celebrated, but it's also something that can give a community, a country, and a region completely different level of understanding. That's why for us, it was so important to create the Aga Khan Music Awards, which celebrate excellence in the arts and excellence in music for anyone, no matter which nationality, which geography, which part of the world that person were to come from. It celebrates excellence, and it celebrates the influence of Islam, of Muslim cultures. There will be one element that will connect modernity to that element of tradition, that will give it its name, its passport, its identity, its geographic location. But at the same time, it will not bring with it any kind of negative connotations or dogma. It will just celebrate beauty in the form in which it was conceived and in the form in which it is taken by generations today and made into their own creation.
Why don't you share with us your own story, because it's pretty fascinating where you've traveled and what you've learned along the way.
That is the longest question for me to answer. I still haven't quite learned. Look, I'm the product of what put me together. I was born in Sri Lanka and brought up for the first few years of my life between Sri Lanka, Maldives and India. I then lived the very large part of my childhood in the Middle East between Jordan, Lebanon, and at that point wider into the region. I studied very briefly in Uzbekistan and then also in Russia and then mostly in the UK. I've worked in the US and in Russia and then back in Russia as well. And then I've been a citizen and a dweller of Switzerland for many, many years. And what I think gave me a language of expression is the fact that I found my passion in AKDN, because this organization, through its commitment to pluralism, recognizes that our work, just like pluralism itself, and His Highness put that very well once, it's a process and it's never a finished product. So through making that process my own on a daily basis, I'm able to not only validate my own identity, but also celebrate everything that contributed to it, no matter which continent that was done in.
Fairouz, thank you so much for speaking with us today. What a joy to hear your stories. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. Anytime. It's a pleasure and honor.
What a great chat. Fairouz also said that if she ever does meet Beyonce, she'll be sure to try to hook us up with some free merch, t-shirts and stuff. No, she did not say that. No way. Okay, next up, let's hear from some talented Canadian artists in our own community, because newsflash, yes, we have them. They are from across Canada, and not only are they pursuing their passion for music, but they're taking it to a whole new level. Still, their parents secretly wish they'd just apply to medical school. Kidding. Enjoy.
Hello, my name is Amin Bhatia, and I am a composer of music for film and television. I've been doing this for about 35, close to 40 years. Doing that professionally. As someone who loves music, I think I've been doing that all my life.
The story that my family tells is that I would come home, and typically from Jamatkana, from Kane, and play some of the melodies that I heard from Ginans or Thusby or things like that on the piano. And this is something that I still love to do today in recreating music that I hear.
My tabla journey started by watching my dad perform drums for Kushali band. He used to ask me to perform percussions for him, and when I did, that's when I knew I loved performing for others. On March 21st, 2018 was the biggest highlight of my tabla journey. I was asked to perform for the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, at a Nowruz celebration. Not only did I perform for the Prime Minister of Canada, but I also had an opportunity to get interviewed by Global News. Outside of Jamaati programs, I have had an opportunity to perform at a national India competition where I ranked 3rd in my category.
As a composer, I enjoy exploring the ontology of music, stretching it and pushing it to its furthest limits, while creating a coherent voice based around the global village. Very much a concept of the 21st century and an expectation of the pluralistic society that we live in, to fuse influences that would otherwise never be fused together.
Actually, I started performing in Jamaat Khana in the Nowruz celebration. The Mukisab called me and said, do you want to start? Do you want to perform in Nowruz? I said, Mukisab, it's my first time. I never performed in live events, so for me it's kind of difficult. He said, you know what? Let's try it. And after that, I got a lot of positive comment from Jamaat. They said you have a great voice. They said you're singing very good. So after that, I got more motivated and I started singing more.
As my interest in Indian classical music grew deeper, I realized that I needed to go to India to study the tradition further. And my guru, my mentor here, was also encouraging me to do the same. So I decided to apply for different grants and scholarships, and those grants took me to India, sort of back and forth over a 2-year period, when I studied from master teachers from different gharanas or schools of music within the Indian classical tradition.
On 2 occasions now, I have actually been extremely honored to create music for the Jamaat. In both cases, on Maulana Hazar Imam's Golden and Diamond Jubilee, I was commissioned to take Javi Dilgir's melody, Rasulillah, and reorchestrate it for full orchestra. And so what became the nasheed is actually based on that melody. And in both cases, I got to work with orchestrators and engineers and producers and then a full-size symphony orchestra in creating the anthem for Maulana Hazar Imam. And then a few years ago at the Diamond Jubilee, actually performed it at Aiglemont with a hand-picked group of musicians.
I'm also humbled by the art forms that I continue to practice. Kathak and classical piano both, and just piano as an instrument of incredible musical capacity, potential. They both have this ability to get me both really down about things I can't do on my instrument, whether it be the piano or even my feet, and then incredibly just euphoric when I've achieved something. And so that humility, I think, is one of the through lines of being a musician.
So I've been very fortunate in that the timing of my career corresponded with a lot of things in the Ismaili community. So I was asked to play at the Direct Energy Center when Hazar Imam came to open the Aga Khan Museum. Salim and Suleiman were very kind enough to choose me to join them in Dubai for the Jubilee Games, and I got a chance to work with them and perform for the closing ceremonies. I also managed to be selected to play for the Stories production, which toured actually all of the United States with 20 or 30 artists from all over North America. So I was very fortunate to be able to do that. So yeah, I've had a number of opportunities. It was incredible. It's just amazing. Because what it allowed me to do was to connect with people in a way that otherwise I would never have had the opportunity. Just the sense of, for example, at Jubilee Games, performing for 15,000 people in the stadium, knowing that it was also being streamed to, 250,000 people around the world. I mean, there's no way that you can recreate that, or even, how do I even put that into words except for, wow.
Probably I was 13 or 14 years old in Karachi, and we all dressed up very nicely, and it was in the Sheraton Hotel, and we played there, and Hazar Imam walked past, and so those were some really exciting moments, and I'm so ever so grateful that the way I was looked after by my brothers and my sisters and the whole Jamaat, like when I was performing for the orchestra in Garden as a very young boy. So I think I owe that to that, that love was instilled in me from a very young age, from having those wonderful experiences.
I had the opportunity and the privilege to participate in Jubilee Arts, where I presented a spoken word art installation, which also consisted of me playing musical instruments. And it was under my alias Infinite Possibilities. I thoroughly enjoyed the gala at the Aga Khan Museum, where I got to meet fellow artists and collaborators who to this day I cherish. As such, I think Jubilee Arts was a very important initiative that the Imam has undertaken, and I'm looking forward to the next Jubilee Arts and looking forward to meaningful ways to contribute on some level.
So my grandma always say that, I'm gonna say this in Farsi, that music ruda zinda mukana. What means, so the definition is that music makes souls alive or happy. So this is my lesson from singing.
I know that sometimes people say that about music that it's a universal language, and I feel it's actually a language at a soul level. That when you listen to music, we all understand without really understanding what, whether this music is from Japan or China or Morocco or Argentina. But our basic, reaction to music is that like our soul knows.
One of the biggest lessons I've learned is that music mimics life. Playing an instrument is like anything in life. So, if you want to get better at it and you want to have success at it, you just have to work hard at it. You can't just expect that something is going to come to you because it's just going to come to you. You have to sit down, you have to make a plan, you have to execute your plan, and you have to put in the time to get there. Just like life. If you want to do anything in life, you have to know what you want to do, have a plan, execute the plan, and inshallah you'll get there.
My advice for young aspiring musicians within our Jamaat would be to never give up and to always persevere in advocating for yourself. There's probably hundreds of different reasons not to pursue a field that is so niched and different from what you're probably seeing your friends pursue, but there are a million reasons why it's the right path for you. So never forget why you're on this journey and the happiness that your music brings to you and those around you.
There's a formula to how to make a living in the arts, and to me the formula is 33%, 33%, 34%. 33% is your abilities, whatever they are. How skilled you are, how technically proficient you are, how talented you are, all those things, and being able to create art. That's 33%. The other 33% is being able to work in a team. It is, it's not enough that you just come up with something that you feel good about musically or visually or whatever it is that you do. You've also got to be able to work with the people around you to make that vision become a reality. So that's all of the team of engineers and producers and agents and people around you. You've got to be able to work with them. You have to be able to work with a client. I love being able to create pieces of music here, but if the client doesn't like it, guess what? I got to throw it out and do it again. And you have to remember that this is that kind of world, especially in music for film and television. So those are the two halves of that formula. And then 34%, pure luck. Being at the right place at the right time. Meeting someone, later that person remembers you and remembers to connect you to this. It bears repeating. Just be a good person. Be good with people. Be good to the people around you. You never know how a chance meeting with someone in an elevator, at a bus stop, can connect you to something that you may have been pursuing for a while, and suddenly that actually starts to become a reality.
It's definitely worth it to get involved in some form of art, whatever form interests you, and to pursue that. It's an important part of relating to other human beings and learning about the world, and it's complementary to any other education that you might get in your life.
My whole family has been my biggest supporters. They have stood by me every step of the way. They have supported, guided, and mentored me. I also wanted to thank the whole Jamaat for being there for me. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am today.
That was truly inspiring. It makes me want to resume my clarinet lessons, because I'll have you know I was once part of the Calgary Ismaili Marching Band. Thank you very much. But unlike me, let's now hear from some talented Canadian musicians who were part of the Diamond Jubilee Homage Ceremony. They'll share their experiences and how it affected them.
I remember that moment so very clearly. I was actually doing my dishes at the time, humming to myself as I usually do, and my phone was nowhere in sight. And for some reason, I had the sudden urge to turn off the tap and dry my hands and walk over to the kitchen table where my phone was placed face down and it wasn't audibly ringing. And I turned over the phone, and lo and behold, there was an incoming call. And it read Guvia, France. And I knew exactly where that was. And so I recall taking a deep breath and sitting down, answering the call, and speaking to the wonderful and kind voice on the other end. And initially I had the range of expected human emotions: shock, disbelief, excitement, humbled, overwhelmed. And as I began to become aware of how special the ask was, I was overwhelmed with gratitude. I recall Maulana Haji Imam saying something to the effect of, I place my hand on the shoulders of each and every one of you. And in that moment, I felt wholly his presence and his hand on my shoulders.
When I first found out I was invited to play at Aiglemont, I was shocked to say the very least. In fact, what had actually happened was I received a phone call, I answered the phone, and I was told about this amazing opportunity to be one of the performers to present at the homage ceremony. And my reaction was to say, that's fantastic, thank you so much, can I call you tomorrow to let you know? And my wife, who has passed away since, had mentioned to me, she said, did you actually just say to the people at Aiglemont that you are going to think about this? And I said, yes. She said, no, you pick up the phone right now, call them back and say that you would be very honored to be a part of the homage ceremony. And of course I did pick up the phone right away and phone back and tell them that I was immensely humbled and it was such a privilege. I was in so much shock that I had been asked. I wasn't actually sure what was happening, and I'm glad that I was put to my senses and called back right away. Also, having been invited to be at Aiglemont, my nerves were shot. I was really, really nervous and realized that this was not only important for myself, but for my family, for the Jamaat, and if nothing else, this was the absolute most important musical endeavor that I would ever have an opportunity to be a part of.
Our first couple of days at the conservatory, where we were practicing, rehearsing, creating, collaborating, they were nerve-wracking. They were scary. It was meeting a new group of people and needing at the same time to open up as soon as possible so that we could start working together and creating a piece. And so we had, you know, Tajik, Syrian, Afghani, American, British, Canadian brothers and sisters sitting in a room needing to feel confident in themselves and their own traditions. And so we actually spent the first little bit of rehearsals becoming acquainted with each other's traditions and getting to shine as artists, which I think, you know, when you collaborate, you need to have that sense of confidence and ability to bring your voice to the table. We got there based on this foundation of we're comfortable as artists, we know where we can contribute individually, and then it became iteration. It became bringing up ideas and throwing things back and forth, and some days it was really hard, and we were in a room with a bunch of artists and trying to coordinate instrumentalists and vocalists in different areas and of different musical traditions. But, you know, in the end, we just kept on pushing through with the same vision, and in a matter of, you know, I think it was between 5 and 8 days, came up with a piece that really reflected many of the major traditions of the Jamaat. And so that process was eye-opening in terms of how we work with others in general.
But by far the most significant challenge was the ask itself. I mean, it was a magnanimous task. When you think about bringing together musicians from all corners of the world who speak different languages, coming from different music idioms, expressing, creating, learning, and teaching artistic ideas in a diversity of ways, whether that be by rote listening or notated music. And then to create a 20-minute continuous devotional piece to accompany our beloved institutional leaders in a symbolic march, one that is an expression of love and devotion and prayer and supplication, and also one that would hopefully resonate with every murid across the globe in some way at some point in time in that musical expression. It just seemed and is an insurmountable task. And to me, that was the most significant challenge, but I say that with a caveat because in hindsight, on reflecting and upon introspection, and now I can say this, months and years later, that it was by far the biggest blessing, because that process itself was rigorous and an exercise in pluralism in a way, and the learnings from that continue to have ripple effects.
It was a really big highlight to be able to connect with so many different people and to learn about their stories and to really realize that we really truly were and are one Jamaat. It was also a very difficult process. It was difficult in the sense that everybody was bringing forth their best and wanted, of course, to have a voice. And I think that we really did an amazing job, if I may say so, of being able to unify those voices and to have a shared voice, a one voice of the Jamaat worldwide to be able to present on that day. There were many, many moments during that whole experience that we could feel the hand of the Imam on our shoulder as we performed and as we practiced and as we went through the beautiful exercises in trying to get this music together. And there were so many moments during those practices and during the performance where you just felt so emotional and overcome with love and a sense of togetherness that it was a truly unique and very, very beautiful experience.
Music really is a global language, and it was our love of the art and desire to do something great for the Imam that really moved us to work together and push through some of the language and cultural differences that we ended up overcoming and together making something really beautiful.
One key moment that had happened actually during the rehearsals was when Maulana Hazar Imam himself came to observe the group performing. And that experience was unlike any other experience. But I think it would be best summarized by saying that you really understood and knew what it meant to be an Ismaili, to be a part of a larger global community. Also, the sense of diversity, the sense of pluralism, the sense of love, and the sense of togetherness, and all for such a beautiful moment. It was an experience like no other, and an experience that I am extremely grateful for. My spiritual journey still continues to this day because of that ceremony, and has guided me in many ways musically, and also in many other aspects of my life, and has guided the type of person I wanted to become and the type of person I'm still becoming. I am eternally grateful for these moments.
The couple of days leading up to July 11th, it was raining, it was kind of cold, not the ideal weather for a group that was supposed to be singing on an outdoor stage. And so there was a real concern that that we might not be able to perform, and that our hard work might not see the light of day. No pun intended. And at the same time, some people were kind of moved forward with this faith that they would be able to share our work with the Imam and with the Jamaat. And when the day came, the sun came out. The stage dried up, and I remember one of the staff on the ground saying, it was the Imam cleaning it's the streets being cleaned before the Imam's ceremony. Was the rain just washing the driveway and the area that we were singing on. It was such an incredible experience, and being on the property amongst a beautiful forest that was really serene and calm, and an experience I will remember for the rest of my life.
Those were some great insights. Please join us next week for a special COVID episode on Friday Night Reflections. As vaccines begin to roll out across Canada, we know there are a lot of questions about vaccine timing, safety, availability, effectiveness, and so much more. Unless, of course, you live in Australia or New Zealand, in which case, congratulations, the world could learn a lot from you. So please visit iicanada.org and submit a video question. Please submit all of your questions, and we really do hope you'll join us for what will be a very important show. And just like that, my time with you has come to a close for this week. Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say, I know it hasn't been easy being in isolation for this long. Many of us have lost loved ones, are separated from them, or maybe we just miss those hugs and one-on-one time that we might have taken for granted before. I, for one, have been away from my parents and sister for more than a year, so I just want to give them a shout out from across the border. They're lukewarm about me, but they really do miss their grandson. This is Amari. So we just want to say we love you, we miss you. We can't wait for the day that we can just sit on the couch and watch Cubby Cushy Cubby Gum as a family, like everyone else. Am I right? Speaking of awesome soundtracks, I think it's about time for the musical interlude, which is the signal that I should be wrapping up. I just don't want to leave. This has been so much fun. Have a wonderful week, and hopefully it's filled with lots of great music. And as a matter of fact, the party doesn't have to end here just because it's Friday. Tweet me your favorite music. Doesn't matter what language, English, Farsi, French, Arabic, the songs that have kept you sane during this pandemic. You can tweet me or send me a note on Instagram at Zulekha Nathoo. And if you have any complaints, send them to my TikTok account because I don't even know how to work that thing, so I'll probably never get them. Okay, thank you so much. Bye, bonsoir, salam, yali madat. Stay safe. Yay! I think that worked. I better have been recording.